All right. Any other public comment?
Rurik Holiday, 1 Franklin Avenue. I would say sweet and sour. I visited West Germany in 1989, the month before the wall came down. Visiting a town on the border, I climbed a tower and looked down into East Germany. The border between East and West was some 300 yards wide and included every impediment to movement you can think of. Well, the only thing the East Germans had that we do not have at the beautiful Schadler berm is a line of barbed wire. Of course, I'm being facetious, but only to point out the idiocy of the beautiful berm yet again. How much in tax dollars is the berm costing, whatever the berm is? How many of the Arbor Vitae, at one time we talked about blue spruce, now Arbor Vitae, will be around by next year? And the tons of mulch, how many weeds will it be stopping in the next year or so? Once, now it looks going to be pretty. You have the trees on top, you have the mulch. You know something? Give it a year. It'll look as messy as it has in the last couple of years. What is really serious, frankly, is what is the plan for Schadler? It seems to change with the weather. One day we're going to have a steel fence on the inside. Now it's a pine split rail fence. Then I pointed out the fact that this is a great thing for kids to play with, so they put this chicken wire, which is just ridiculous. And then now it looks like there's going to be a steel fence on the outside. Is that in a plan anywhere? Am I correct? If I'm wrong, tell me. When will we have a plan that doesn't go with the seat of the pants? Someone decides. Do you decide? Do you decide? Who decides? It's ridiculous. And don't tell me about all these grants, because it's all taxpayer money. It all came out of my wallet and your wallets. Let us have a plan. And I suggest very strongly that for Schadler and the master plan to be used as gimmicks in a re-election campaign is ridiculous. I urge you to instruct the village manager to put a stop to any spending on any of these items until the election is over. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Pleased to see that the Council has put on the agenda for tonight the discussion regarding the smart controllers. I sent you all an email last week where I indicated that I do have some concern that those of us who do not use smart controllers are governed by an ordinance which was approved by the Village Council and for which there was a public hearing, while those who are using smart controllers are exempt from such ordinance. Therefore, the hours under which they can operate their systems are not governed by the Council and were not given the opportunity for the public to make comment on. Those hours are under the control of the Water Department. Again, as I've pointed out in the past, I see that as disparate treatment. Those of us who are limited to watering 2 days a week during certain hours a day and are governed by an ordinance that specifically states those days and times, and those people who have smart controllers are using rules that are formulated by the Water Department and you had no input into. So I'm hoping that some action is taken tonight in the direction of trying to straighten that out. I also don't believe that the use of smart controllers or the hours and days in which the people can use the smart controllers promotes water conservation. As we saw this past summer when it was very hot and dry, people who had smart controllers seemed to be able to water quite a lot, and those of us who didn't have smart controllers were restricted in our Lawrence Stern Brown. So I'm hoping that straightened out sometime this evening. Although you are not required to do so, I would appreciate it if prior to the start of that discussion, any of you who did have the benefit of using a system that had a smart controller attached, just identify that you used a system this year, or you had a system installed in your house this year that had a smart controller prior to the start of that discussion, just so there's some transparency if there are any council members who had the benefit of being able to water more than those who did not have the ability to water. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? With that, we will close public comment, and I'm just going to add a few responses. So the group, I believe, for the Gold Star Monument is looking at reducing the footprint. They heard the comments from the council. As a reminder, the War Memorial is not the only significant item in the park. There's a 9/11 area in memory of those lost from Ridgewood. There's a Thomas McGuire plaque. So we do have other things that identify what that park is collectively about. So, but they are looking at reducing the footprint. Okay, all right. So let me, as a reminder, the Gold Star Monument is intended to honor the families of fallen soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice for us to have the conversation about where it should go. In terms of Shedler, I do want to respond to that. There is a plan for Shedler. It's been out in the world for quite some time. Of course, it's a conceptual plan, and a conceptual plan is slightly different, or probably more significantly different from the engineering plans that will finally or are finally drawn. So it's a very big difference. The difference between a wrought iron fence versus a split rail fence is, as it's been discussed, both the property and the house are historic and fall under the jurisdiction of the State Historic Preservation Office, and as such, that was their recommendation. We find it to be incredibly safe. I will point out that just the other day I was reading on Facebook a post that the commenter actually commented on, that the Shedler property is a gross mismanagement and over $7 million spent and nothing to show for it in 7 years, and gross mismanagement. Well, the news flash is the person who made the post and those who commented on have no understanding of the budget process, no understanding about how this works, and until such time, they should really not spread either deliberately misinformation or knowingly spread disinformation. Allocations are not money spent. They are in preparation for a field. So it's just simply, once again, we're back to the Shedler crazy. People really need to understand this is a process. It takes time to develop a park, and the original plan was just approved at the end of 2017. We all know we had COVID, and prior to my being reappointed as mayor in 2020, a unauthorized plan was submitted to SHPO, and I corrected that, and we're back on track, and it actually looks great over there. So we're excited, and we do have a plan, and there will be a field, and we thank everyone. And with that, we will go to the manager's report. Heather.
I'd just like to make a comment on Shedler before we move on, and also on the Gold Star Mothers Memorial. I think several of us have taken a look at, gone out to Van Nest. I know I did. And I think we all need a little more time to reflect on the memorial proposed and what we all want to put a memorial of some kind for Gold Star Mothers for all the right reasons. Whether or not that is the appropriate place, size, type of memorial remains to be seen. One of the things that I did note is that the place delineated on the schematic is exactly where the Christmas tree is. So there will be some small or major modification of that. And I think that it's going to be scheduled for a full discussion on October 26th. I think we'll all have a chance to look at this. most of the council saw that plan for the first time when we sat down at council, at the council dais. So I think we need a little time on that, and we're gonna take a much closer look at that. As far as Shedler's concerned, you know, look, this all happened before I came here. One of the things that I see as a problem is its designation as a historic site. That has created tremendous delay. And then, of course, there's COVID. But I was not here, so it is difficult for me to comment on it. But the fact that it was placed on the State Historic Preservation list has really created tremendous delay, because without that, we would have a free hand to move forward. So, you know, and we're going to keep looking at that and trying to move it along.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
And my mic is on. Yes, I would like to have on the Gold Star Family Memorial, I'd like to have input from our Parks Department and also from Ridgewood Arts Council, if possible, and a licensed landscape architect. Siting is important.
That's a great point. So, and I'm just going to, the historic listing was a result of the property actually transacted in 2008 or 9, and it was the Historic Preservation Commission members. I was not on Historic Preservation Commission. I wasn't here when the property was purchased. They filed for a certificate of eligibility for both the house and the property. The house received the certificate of eligibility almost immediately. The property was contingent on a Phase 1 archaeological study. In 2017, I believe the Village Council authorized that, and the Village Council then moved it forward. So it's not something that, it was something that was done right here in part of a meeting. It was funded, we voted on funding, and then we got the letter. So I think that there's a benefit and a burden, right?
There's a tremendous burden
Yeah.
associated with it being on the State Historic Preservation site. And in hindsight, whether or not that would have been done, again, knowing what happened, remains to be seen. But hindsight is always 20/20. We are where we are, and that is because I've spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people about this. More than anything else, that is the greatest delay. Whether or not it should have been done doesn't matter now. It's done. So that's really what's causing 90% of the delay.
So, and just before we go to Heather, I just want to say also that prior to that happening, I in fact contacted SHPO to make certain that a historic designation did not at all prevent us from putting an athletic field there. And so it wasn't preventing anything, it was just a matter of the bigger picture. But I did make that phone call because of that concern. So in any event, with that, we will go to the manager's report now.
So vote by mail ballots have been sent out to all who automatically receive them or anyone who has requested them, and they will continue to go out up till just about before Election Day. The final date to register to vote in the November general election is October 18th. The village clerk's office will handle voter registration from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on that day, and then in the lobby of the Ridgewood Library from 4:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. So as long as you're registered by 9 p.m. on October 18th, you will be able to vote in the general election. Just as a reminder, if you've moved within Ridgewood, you should re-register with your new address because of the fact that you may be in a different election district. All village offices will be closed on October 10th in observance of Columbus Day. There will be no recycling or garbage pickup. The recycling center will also be closed. Please check the schedule in your calendar for garbage pickup dates as they may have changed. I was going to do a Shedler property update. We pretty much covered it. The berm's been completed. The fencing and mesh are being installed. The trees are being planted. Irrigation is being connected. The next items will probably be a driveway into the area as well as some parking areas. The Ridgewood Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring Ridgewood Sale Days this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with special sales and bargains to close out the summer and enjoy the crisp fall air. If it rains, the sales will move inside the stores. The Moms Club had planned to have an event during this sidewalk sale days. However, they're going to postpone it until the spring. Oktoberfest in Ridgewood West Village, Saturday and Sunday, October 8th and 9th, starting at noon in the West Side train station parking lot. Come enjoy hay rides from noon to 5 p.m., food, pumpkin painting, scarecrow making contest, tent to vendors, toss games, sidewalk chalking, and ice cream, and a full weekend of music during the day and into the night. The Ridgewood PBA Food Truck and Kids Corner will be held October 9th between 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. to raise funds for pediatric cancer. There will be a bounce house and games for kids to play and food trucks. There will also be live music and a separate beer garden. Parking is at Graydon Pool parking lot. The Village of Ridgewood's annual flu clinic will be held this Thursday, October 6th from 10 a.m. to noon at the Community Center on the ground floor of Village Hall. Please call 201-291-6090 to schedule an appointment. If you need additional information, please contact our health department. The Bergen County Utilities Authority on October 16th will hold a household hazardous waste collection event at Bergen Community College on Paramus Road from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., rain or shine. No commercial vehicles are allowed, and it's free to Bergen County residents with ID, and this closes promptly at 3 p.m. Village Council upcoming meetings are broadcast live from the Village Hall courtroom on Village website and Channel 34 on FiOS. October 12th and November 9th are public meetings which begin at 8 p.m. And October 26th and November 2nd are work sessions which begin at 7:30 p.m. That's all I have.
That's it. Councilman Vagianos?
I have nothing to report since Wednesday.
I think it was only like 4 days ago, right? 5 days ago. Okay. Councilman, Deputy Mayor Perrin, sorry. Apologies.
It was a short week. I have nothing to report.
Councilwoman Reynolds?
Ditto.
Okay, and that leaves me. Okay, good. I'm up. Saturday, I attended the 100th anniversary celebration of the Upper Ridgewood Community Church. The church was formed in the early 1900s and formally incorporated on January 26, 1920, with 9 trustees and 46 charter members. The celebration was originally scheduled for May of 2020, in case anyone just did the math on that, and making sure. The celebration obviously was delayed due to COVID. The celebration centered around the theme Songs of Heaven and Earth, and I can assure everyone they were definitely songs of heaven and earth. The afternoon was wonderful. The music was beautiful. I brought back 2 lovely 100-year anniversary Christmas tree ornaments to be added to our village tree. And I do have a book about the history of Upper Ridgewood Community Church. So thank you to everyone at Upper Ridgewood Community Church for inviting me and for everything you do for our communities. Access Weekend is this weekend, so please visit ridgewoodlibrary.org/Access Ridgewood for details and programming. Access Ridgewood, embracing our abilities, disabilities, special gifts, and special needs. Hope to see everyone this weekend. It'll be a fun and exciting event. Today, I received an email from a resident asking about the master plan public hearing being carried to October 4th. The issue was obviously Yom Kippur. As I stated at the September 20th meeting, I just want to reiterate it here to make sure everyone is on the same page, understands what we're doing. At that planning board meeting, as also announced last week at the village council meeting, I was actually surprised to learn that we had a planning board meeting scheduled the same night as Yom Kippur. It is a previously scheduled application, site plan review application for Bethlehem Lutheran Church. Since all board members were available for the meeting, we decided to continue the master plan hearing to the 4th, and then to October 8th to carry it again, to continue with it. Doing so also, I'm sorry?
October 18th.
Did I say 18th?
I thought you said 8th.
Oh, 18th, the 18th. It's my son's birthday. I can't I do know it's the 18th. Doing so provided the committee an opportunity, the master plan committee, to confirm that they had finished their work with comments, cleanup, and typos. So again, that master plan hearing is carried to tomorrow night and then will be carried again to the 18th so everyone can participate. And with that, we will go to our meeting discussion.
Okay. So our first item of discussion for Ridgewood Water is awarding a professional services contract. This is for a public policy consultant. Since 2018, we've had Morford Drulis with Michael Drulis, who has been our public policy consultant. This is for Ridgewood Water, as I mentioned. The recommendation is a one-year service contract with Morford Drulis of Trenton, New Jersey, in the amount of $27,000, which is the same amount that it was last year. Funding is in the water operating budget. Let me hand these out. Thanks. Yep, that's what I'm going to do.
So can I just have mine emailed because I'm paperless? Did I get this in an email?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is this sent in a PDF for me?
I can.
Well, good, because I
Sorry.
don't have any paper.
No,
I'm paperless.
I'll send you a PDF.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right, so good evening. Thank you, Mayor Council. As we do every year, when it's time to reappoint the firm Murphy Drulis, we have Michael Drulis come give us an update on the accomplishments for the year and set up goals for the coming year. Believe it or not, will be the 5th year that we're embarking on public policy for Ridgewood Water in the Village of Ridgewood. I have to say this prior year was probably one of the most successful. It has to do with a lot of the groundwork we've laid out, a lot of participation by the mayor and the village when we got money. We got grants, we got successful changes in the intended use plan at the state that allows us to borrow more money. We've also had the effect on legislators in Trenton that they're now starting to make policy that is more in line with things we've been telling them for the past 4 years. We've been telling them they need to pay attention to how these regulations take effect and how much time is needed to put things into effect after they make a new rule. And they're actually starting to pay attention to that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Drulis. He's going to go through some of those accomplishments. I probably stole a few of them already. And also talk about goals for the coming year.
Just the big ones. That's okay, though. That sounds great coming from you, Rich. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I think you said your son's birthday is October 18th?
It is.
Libra's rock. Mine's October 18th, too.
Oh, isn't that so fun?
Yeah, it's coming quick. But it's been a great year for Team Ridgewood. It really has, as Rich has mentioned. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Michael Drulis. I'm the principal partner with Morford Drulis Associates, along with my associates in Trenton. We are a public policy firm who specializes in good government interest, particularly clean drinking water. This year, the team really came together, as Rich has said, and worked closely with the mayor, with the council, with the city manager, and Mr. Calby and his staff, and advanced good public policy in the halls of the State House, in the governor's office, in EPA, DEP, our regulating bodies, the Capitol Hill, and, of course, the White House. I know you all have been paying attention to the amount of stimulus that has been coming from Washington and how it's come through New Jersey. Well, because of the work of this team, the Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water was in a very good position to be in the receiving end with qualifying projects and be able to speak the language that made it easier for the policy leaders to write the checks. There's now a line forming of utilities who want to be where Ridgewood is, so it's been very successful. The real success has been the constant communication now between this government organization and the other government organizations, our sister agencies, whether it's at the state, congressional offices. Rich alluded to the fact that Ridgewood has a credibility that is really important when discussing these issues. And it's not a handout mentality. It's how do we make good laws that can advance what our local utilities are doing. and it's been well received. So Rich went over the work that we've done with Congressman Gottheimer this year in the community funding projects. It was something that hasn't been done before. So besides being awarded the money, it was making sure that Ridgewood got the money, and we're still working through that process because these are all new programs for the federal government. The iBank is once again flushed with cash. When we first started speaking in 2018, the iBank had a sign, no money, don't call. Now they have a lot of money, and we've been working with the iBank to make sure that Ridgewood gets the cheapest money possible. You have a great rating, but you're able to also take advantage of grants that will greatly reduce the interest, giving us more borrowing power over a longer period of time, all to the benefit of the ratepayers and the taxpayers. The intended use plan, as Rich had alluded to, the way the project is working in terms of the PFAS mitigation build-out, there's a large chunk of it that is getting done in a very abbreviated piece of time over a year. And we've been working to get the caps raised so that the full amount of that money could qualify for no-interest loans and the highest blended rate we could get. And we did that work through the DEP and the intended use plan, and we expect that the commissioner is going to sign off on that. And then in the state legislature, constantly working with the legislature to help them to craft bills that are meaningful solutions, but that can also be accomplished. The legislature is often interested in making solutions that are quick, but we all know that quick solutions are hard to come by. And they're starting to get reasonable in terms of time frames. Instead of wanting things this year in a piece of legislation, they're giving 3-year rollouts now based on the advice of the Ridgewood team, and what's reasonable in terms of cost. So these are just examples of the things that we've been able to work on. In the upcoming 12 months, I expect we will continue to exercise the coalition that Ridgewood has built out of similar utilities. The privately run utilities are a very strong voice before the BPU. We've organized the local utilities so we too can speak our mind and what's important. And by and large, we get along with most things, but in terms of being a local utility, some of our funding mechanisms are different and some of our customer needs are different, and that voice is now being heard through that coalition. We'll continue to educate new legislators as they get elected and new policy leaders and as they get appointed. And then there's some who are not new, but they're new to clean water. It's become a really interesting topic, and there's more policy leaders jumping into the topic because it needs more thought, it needs more work. So as part of our arrangement, we will continue to provide our monthly updates. We'll continue to meet and to discuss what we see, what we hear. That feedback we get is so important that we can then bring that to the halls of Trenton. And lastly, we'll seek new initiatives and initiatives that keep Ridgewood ahead in terms of what's important and how we can move forward with this massive build out. There are some regulatory hurdles that we'll be dealing with out of DEP, and I think we have some plans to get through those hurdles quickly by using some tried and true methods that we would have to have some legislative change to achieve, but we already have a number of legislators, some who are local to this territory, who are interested in picking up the bill. The legislation, I should say. They can pick up the bill too, but so that is my thoughts. If I can answer any questions, I'd be glad to, but thank you for allowing us to serve your residents and your customers in the last year, and we hope we can continue to do that.
Just to comment, Michael, you've returned some very substantial and tangible results for your services. We really appreciate it. I have one question. Is Drulis of Greek heritage, that name?
Yes, it is.
Figures.
We always seem to find each other in rooms, right?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
No, just thank you very much. I don't
you.
have any questions.
So I'm just going to say that our meetings are amazing. They're so informative, and I think this is one of the best decisions that the village council, I guess in, what year? Was it 18 we first did this? So it was actually one of the best decisions we made. I look forward to the reports and participating, so I thank you, and I think we're in a really good place now, so thank you. And thanks, of course, to Rick.
Very kind, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is awarding a sole source contract. So Ridgewood Water tested the blending of Passaic Valley Water Commission and Ridgewood Water via controlled pipe loop corrosion study in 2019. Passaic Valley Water Commission utilized a corrosion control product called Caris 4500. Positive results regarding corrosion were found while blending it. The NJDEP was provided a copy of this corrosion control study and subsequently issued a permit to Ridgewood Water that required the addition of Caris 4500 at the Passaic Valley Water Commission interconnection. Based on this information, the continuous use of the chemical Caris 4500 is strongly recommended as a sole source for corrosion control. So the recommendation is to award a contract to Caris LLC of Peru, Illinois, not to exceed $26,000. They are a sole source vendor, and the money is in the water operating account. Any questions? Okay.
Could you just put that in the resolution? In the resolution, it says the funds are available in account number such and such. It doesn't say water account.
Okay.
So can you just specify that?
Everything in water is paid for by water. It is. But if you prefer to have it say that, that's fine.
Yes, thank you.
Discussion on regulations for smart controllers. I'll just turn it over to Mr. Calby. You have different permits by year, and I'll just have him go through it.
Excuse me, I'll just go grab my glasses left in my pocket. So we last discussed this issue on August 3rd, and I believe leaving that meeting, my charge was to go back and look at the data resulting from accounts that have smart controllers. They want to know if the smart controllers are being effective, what percentage were, what percentage weren't. So subsequently, we did go back and do that. There was a total of 345 smart controller permit holders through August 31st. 326 of those permits were issued through 2021. So 19 of them were new permits issued in this current year. So we didn't focus on those at all because there's no data to compare them to. We didn't even look at the ones in 2021 because, again, 2022 wasn't finished. So we couldn't compare data to see if they saved water. So in total, it left about 246 accounts to look at. So we dove into the data of those 246 accounts, and they ranged from customers that got a smart controller permit anywhere between 2017 and 2020. And we compared from the time that they got it to the current time through 21 to look at their average usage on an annual basis to see if they were saving water with the smart controller or using more. Of those 246 accounts, and I'm sorry that this keeps drilling down, we only were able to look exactly at 148 of them. And the reason being is that ownership of a home changes. When ownership changes, the smart controller permit doesn't carry over with the property. It has to carry over with the owner because the owner needs to certify that they are watering smart. We can dive back into some of those because some of those people did come back and recertify and held that certification, but that would require a little bit deeper dive in the analysis. We weren't able to do that. But on the basis of the 148 accounts that we looked at for those years 17 through 20, we found that 73, approximately about 50% of them or so, reduced their usage by upwards of 36%. The other 50%, or 75 of the 148 accounts, went up, and some very significantly, upwards of 70%. So similar to the estimates that we were kind of throwing around back in August, we assumed that it was always about a 50-50 split. And we see the same thing with just regular restrictions. There's always about 50% of the people that comply with the regular 2-day-a-week restrictions, and another 50% throughout all 4 communities that probably don't. It all goes down to customer being aware of what they're getting and what they're doing. There's people that take advantage of this for sure, and it's a good 50% of them. So with that data being known, there's definitely something we need to do to the system. I don't think we should abolish the system because there are people that are using it properly and are saving water, upwards of 36%, and that's a high number on an annual basis. In terms of further guidelines, some suggestions, and just to back up, the guidelines that were made are not in the ordinance. That's correct. The ordinance left it up to Ridgewood to set the guidelines in smart control or permit. But those guidelines were based on the state model ordinance. We didn't make up those times. The allotted time in the smart control or permit is consistent with what is in the state model ordinance. That's where we took it from. But one of my recommendations moving forward will be to vary from that and make it consistent with what we require of any other ground sprinkler. Require the same time restrictions. And I wouldn't go any further than that, because I think if you start restricting days, then there's really going to be no difference between a smart controller and the regular restrictions. So I would start there. Another possible alternative, and this could be coupled with changing the time, is to give some incentives. Perhaps develop some type of rebate program that allow these systems to be more affordable to customers. If someone buys it, we could give them a rebate on their bill. Conversely to that, when people recertify every year, we could look into the data and see if they're actually saving and watering smart. And if they're not, we don't give them their recertification. So those 3 things coupled together, I think in my mind address some of the concerns I've heard. I'm happy to hear any ideas you've been thinking about since the 3rd, and now that you know, based on the data, there's about a 50-50 split. And, 50% is a lot. A lot of people not following the permit that we're giving them and this placard that we're giving them that says they're watering smart is a big deal and something that we need to pay attention to.
Rich, I didn't understand what you were saying about make it consistent. Were you saying make it 2 days a week, 3 a.m. to 7 a.m.? Or were you saying make it every day of the week, 3 a.m. to 7 a.m.?
Every day of the week. We're not allowing them every day of the week. They're supposed to be watering smart. The controller is supposed to decide what days it needs to water. I was saying we restrict that between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., not the amount of hours that we currently allow, which is till 12 midnight to 10 a.m. in the morning. We would change that to 3 a.m. to 7 a.m.
But not regulate the days, you're saying?
If you regulate the days, you're pretty much making them consistent with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's real no incentive to get a smart controller at that point.
Okay, I understand.
Rich, I have a few questions.
Yes.
How many customers do we have?
We have 21,000 accounts.
We have 21,000 accounts, and by this representative sampling, we have about 350 permit holders.
Correct.
And half of those 350 permit holders are non-compliant.
Correct.
175.
Yes.
And of our 21,000 customers, we estimate that half of those are not compliant with our water restrictions.
Correct.
And we're focusing on 175 customers here, basically.
175 in any future
Right.
customers.
I would say that your recommendations are something we should implement. And because it is, while it is important, it is such a tiny sampling. And regardless, since 50% of our customers are non-compliant regardless, I would spend more time focusing on the 10,000 customers that are non-compliant who don't have smart controllers than on those that do. But for those that do, I especially like the recommendation of recertification, that if we see that they're not compliant, they don't get recertified for the following year. And I believe that we should move on at that point.
And with that, what I should have said, we got to be careful with that too when we do it, because sometimes people have leaks. They have events that might cause them to go over. So I have to pay particular attention to those accounts when that happens. But I think it's a good start to make people more aware of how they're watering.
Hi, Rich. How many people actually recertify? Like, it doesn't, according to the numbers, it doesn't seem that everybody that has a smart controller recertifies every year.
I don't know the actual numbers, how many people do each year. We see an increase every year in the numbers. I don't know the difference between how many of those are new applications versus how many are dropped off. But I can get those numbers very easily.
Okay, yeah, because these numbers, to me, like, just starting at 2017, permits that year were 51.
Correct.
So only 51 people came and got a permit.
Yes.
Going to 2020, it was a total of 70.
72 new permits.
70 new permits, but then same owner, 29.
Same owner, 50 of this, 2018?
No, 2020.
2020, sorry. A total of 70 new. 29 of those were same owner.
Okay. So we don't know how many of the people that already had the smart controllers came back to recertify.
It's likely somewhere in the middle, the difference of those two.
Okay.
No, actually it'd be more because it has to include any of the ones from 17 through 19.
Okay.
So every year, everyone has to recertify. So each year, the total number of recertifications should exceed 200 at this point.
Right, but does it?
It does, because I mean, this year alone, we have recorded 345 permits.
Okay. What does it take to recertify? Do they have to come in, or can it be online?
They're sent a letter and a form that they have to fill out, attesting that they're going to continue to follow the regulations and Water Smart. And every year they submit that, they sign it, and that's put on file and the record of their permit.
And everybody knows the like, I don't have a smart controller, so I don't really know how it works. So when you have a smart controller, explain to us, do they just set it in April and then it knows when your lawn needs water and it goes off automatically?
So the smart controller is, what it does is it's water based on climate and weather data. So the controllers have to be specified. They have to meet a certain criteria, U.S. Water Sense approved. And what that means is the controller has a device in it that either hooks up to your Wi-Fi or to a weather station on your property and uses that data to control when it should water. So they have to prove that they have a Water Sense certified controller. They have to prove that it's programmed in that automatic mode, utilizing the weather data and a rain sensor on their property to control their watering.
How do they prove that?
They send us a photograph of the unit, the type of unit. They show us that it's in the automatic mode, that the rain sensor is on, and that's our proof.
And then after they send you the proof, they can just change it and set it to go off every day?
Apparently 50% of them are.
I mean, I'm just at a loss for words. It's just ridiculous that
Because a lot of these controllers also have the ability to hook up to your smartphone, so you could look at it and say, override auto, put on manual, on.
I mean, I definitely agree to changing the hours to the same, 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., because maybe part of the problem with the other 10,000 people that don't comply are, hey, I see my next door neighbor watering at 8 a.m. every day. And then, not that they're doing it on purpose. Maybe they don't even know. They're like, okay, they don't know we have restrictions. If their neighbor is watering at 8 a.m. or, midnight every day, they figure maybe they can too. So at least if everybody's in the same time slot, that's a start.
Every year we send out, I shouldn't say every year, we didn't do it during COVID, we sent out a postcard to all consumers with the rules. We publish it in the calendar with the days that are allowed to water. I think we do a lot of outreach to people that they should know. When they get the permit, it's even more documentation on what they're supposed to adhere to. Like you're saying, some people are just not paying attention to it.
I mean, I don't know what this placard looks like. How big is it? Like, do people really, where do they put it? Is it very visible?
It's the size of like a license plate.
Okay.
It's got a blue background, white letters. We advise them that they could either put it in the window or they could put it on a stake in the ground that's waterproof. We tell them it has to be in a place that's visible on the property.
And to most people, so when you have people going out at night trying to find people who are violating, they have a list of everybody that has a smart controller?
Not necessarily. They'll make a list of everybody they find, and when they come back in, they'll make a comparison to the database.
Okay.
And they won't hand out a warning or ticket to that property.
So the people going out at night looking don't really have to see the placard, because
They don't need to.
I don't see how they could in the middle of the night.
Correct.
Okay.
You'd want other people to see it during the day, though.
Right.
To your point about neighbor to neighbor, if they could see why do they have it on. Oh, they have a smart controller. But are they doing it during the right times? When they're doing it every day.
Okay.
So I have a couple of questions. What is the breakdown of smart controllers by municipality?
Oh, good question.
Sorry.
Ridgewood has the majority. I think Glen Rock, Midland Park, and Wyckoff are probably no more than 20 each. Ridgewood's the majority of them.
And then on the ones that exceeded the increase their usage, you don't have a breakdown of where those were?
I don't.
Okay.
I can get that, though.
So in other words, the smart controller is saying, it's raining, the soil's wet, I'm not going to turn on, I'm going to stay off, and then someone comes in and they say, yeah, but I'm going to make a determination that I'm smarter than a smart controller, and I'm going to override the whole thing, and hence, which in theory shouldn't be good for the lawn, because you're not supposed to overwater either. My thought is this. Because this was an effort to conserve water, this is a water conservation effort. My opinion is, I don't think we should be waiting to find out that someone has a leak in their system. I don't think that we should be finding out if people are going over, then we have a vested interest in knowing whether or not they have a leak in their system, because if they have a leak in their system, we're losing water, and we're trying to conserve water, so that unto itself defeats the purpose. I think anyone that went over should receive a letter stating that their usage has increased significantly and that their system will be monitored, and if that continues, they're put on notice that their system, their permissions will be terminated immediately. That can happen. I mean, if you're in June and you see that somebody is, you can monitor that, you'll know if somebody's still up there, terminate them, tell them that's rescinded, you no longer have a permit, and you can follow the same rules as everyone else. I mean, for me, it just seems, and I guess to Mr. Loving's point, that it is it seems a little bit skewed that people are, and I guess to his point, what he may be seeing is those people that are overriding their systems, because realistically you wouldn't see that, it wouldn't be so apparent, right? I think going every day, I think going from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. is the right approach, but I think if anybody is exceeding what their numbers were, their usage was at the time that they initiated the permit, they should be given one warning and then be terminated out of the system. Because if you're not really going to take water conservation seriously and you spent the money so that you could game the system and have a nicer lawn than everyone else in your neighborhood, including me, then I just don't think that that was the intended purpose. The other thing that, hang on, I had one other note. Yeah, I mean, and to Councilman Baggiano's point that half are non-compliant with the 350 permit holders and half of our regular customers are non-compliant, I personally, while I understand that comment, I disagree. I think if we're tracking people and we've given them this special opportunity and there's a thumbing your nose at the rules in order to have something better, I just think that we should rescind their permit effective immediately. I think we should track it for a month, and if you're excessively using water and defeating the purpose of our conservation efforts, then terminate. Be done. It's in my opinion.
I think your point is well taken. My concern is the relative time spent on this. Rich, how much time will it take to monitor these 350 permit holders relative to the amount of time we could spend monitoring the other 20,000 customers? You know, I mean, are we being penny wise and pound foolish, where if we spent the time focusing on everyone, we would save more water?
The everyone question involves a commitment of the other three municipalities.
Right.
But certainly it's a
But
time
even-
drain one way or the other.
Even if it was the 8,000 or so customers in Ridgewood, it dwarfs the number of permits here. And not to say that it's right or it makes us happy, it ticks us off, but I mean, we don't have an unlimited resource of manpower here.
No, everything that we do or change is going to require time. My suggestion was to do it at the time of recertification. It's once a year, and at that time we look back at their account for the prior year and see if they saved or not. If we were to do it on a more recurring basis, it would probably have to be quarterly, because that's when we read. We do read monthly, but the quarterly is what we add up and then bill for. But that would require more staff time. But definitely doing it on an annual basis is something we could do.
So how do you handle, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but how do you handle the 50% of the, I guess basically 50% of the 50% is what it is, right? 50% of those users. What happened, and maybe I missed it, maybe you said it, what's the plan when they come to restart? Are we just going to say, okay, look, you exceeded, so you're done?
We would set up new guidelines. The first year we recertify everyone, and we'd outline for them what the new requirements are, the new rules as part of Watering Smart. And we'd say that on an annual basis moving forward, when you recertify in the following year, we're going to compare your usage, and if you're over X threshold, we're not going to be able to recertify your permit. We'd have to set some kind of threshold. We'd have to say, is it 5% over? Is it even? We'd have to determine what that number is.
Yeah, I think that your proposal is an excellent and efficient use of manpower, given the number of violators. We're talking about 175 violators in this particular category, out of 21,000 customers. We can't lose sight of the trees from the forest.
You know, but I think that I'm not disagreeing with you, but I do think that there's a bigger issue here. And I heard from a lot of people saying, how come that person's watering their lawn? How come I should water my lawn? You know, I think there's a different issue, and I think the issue is that, you know, as a rule follower, you know, you want to see people be compliant, and when other people are following the rules and there's a benefit, you know, I think that we have to at least be a little bit more proactive. So when we're doing the recertification, why not then instead say, your system and usage may be monitored on a quarterly basis, and if in fact there's a overuse based on, and obviously on those 100, the 50% of the 50%, we have to actually go back to the original numbers because you can't use what their numbers are this year. So in other words, you could say, we are periodically, anyone using a smart controller, subject to a periodic review of their usage and termination if their usage exceeds what the original numbers were. I mean, maybe there's a way to write it so you don't have to be monitoring it all the time, but at least put people on notice that if you're violating this and circumventing the system, then we reserve the right to review your account and your usage and terminate your certification.
But isn't that what Rich is proposing on an annual basis? Yeah.
He is proposing it on an annual basis. What I'm saying is say that it may be subject to a quarterly review. Why not just say, we may pull this and review it quarterly? And do the annual, but put everyone on notice, we may do this, and if in fact you're violating, then we will rescind your certification.
Right, because this way, it gives everybody an extra year to cheat,
do whatever
basically.
they want, right.
You know,
we got to start it this year.
You know, at the end of the day, you'll get all the violators. I think we should spend more time focusing on the 10,000 customers who don't abide by the water restrictions, who don't have smart controllers, than spending as much time as this. I think Rich's 3 recommendations were outstanding. I think that the comprehensive assessment of the number of customers we have who have smart controllers and who are in violation gives us a perspective, and I think that we have limited staff resources.
Well,
let's not spend too much time on this.
I have a smart controller, and I would like to see these 3 initiatives implemented as soon as possible. And once they're in, then everybody in Ridgewood will know that it's 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
Right.
And when you see somebody out there watering at 6 p.m., you know that's wrong, unless it's an above-ground sprinkler.
Exactly.
And it won't take quite that much manpower, because everybody knows it's 3 to 7 for the in-ground, whether you got a smart controller or not. So I think you're going to have a lot of people taking pictures and sending you the photographs from their phones.
But you must know there's no teeth in it, because then let's just say you had somebody who's gaming the system, changing their smart controls, then just what is the plan then if you have that person in front of you and then you look at their account? What's the plan?
They won't be
They're on
recertified
notice.
next year.
Yeah, but if I can just add a few things. We've got to, I mean, the key to the whole thing is enforcement, as everybody's talked about. 2 things. Number one, you're probably going to have to change the wording in the application for a smart controller to put them on notice right off the bat of what changes you want to make. I think when you got such a limited number of smart controller users, is the program really worth the effort to try and monitor them to make sure that they're not going or exceeding or misusing the smart controller? That's a separate decision that you guys have to make. But the enforcement aspect of this is as tight and as needy in terms of time as it is with the rest of the program, rest of the users. And although we can't control the regular users in Wyckoff, Midland Park, and Glen Rock, we can't control the smart controller users in Wyckoff, Midland Park, and Glen Rock. So the key is that same age-old problem we have with getting the other towns to enforce. And that's really what we've got to do. We can maybe win over a few people in Ridgewood, but the back end of this is that once you tell them that they don't get certified for it, that doesn't shut off their smart controller, right? Because they still use it, they have it implemented into their system.
They would be regulated back to 2 days a week.
Well,
based on their address.
Right, but they still would use it, and you still got to enforce it if they still use it, even though they don't have a certification. So you have to not only look at this when we rewrite the ordinance from the standpoint of notice and the standpoint of fine for misusing a certified smart controller, but there also has to be a fine or a summons issued for people who get uncertified and still use it, or are using it without certification. And, that's a whole other issue. So I think you've got a secondary question of whether or not the whole program with smart controls is worth it, because the amount of time that it's going to take to monitor all this and make it effective.
And even though the smart controller permittee is in another town, we still have leverage over them based on the fact that they got the permit and have to
Based upon the
recertify it.
certification, but you don't have
But after that, like you're saying, we
you don't
can't
have the
control what they
enforcement
do
capability. So,
after the fact.
So, Rich, I just don't see I just don't see the harm in doing those 3 initiatives, implementing those, but also adding a disclaimer that states your smart controller accounts are subject to, the possibility may be subject to a review of usage on, just like by randomly or anything, that a smart controller account may be subject to water department review, utility review of usage, to ensure that the purpose of the program is being supported, which is water conservation. I think putting that disclaimer in there saying you may be monitored, or we may go back and look at it, doesn't mean you are going to, but it means you have the right to do so. And if you have 20 people complaining about a particular neighbor that's using a smart controller and has this placard in their window, you then have the right to go and monitor that account, take a look at it, and rescind the certification. So even though you're going to do it annually, I would leave myself that piece that you have the right to go in and do that.
the thing is that if they violate it during the year and you catch them, they get issued a summons, and that's the way we're going to try and write this and effectively enforce
Any
it,
ordinance.
which is the interim period. You're not going to write a summons on an annual basis. You're going to write it when they violate it. So there'll be a review if they violate it, and then you can possibly put in there, more than 2 violations warrants the withdrawal or the rescinding of your certification. And that's maybe an easier way to approach it.
I mean, I'm still not satisfied with that, because I think that we have to have, I agree with that, but I still think that a periodic, just putting in that little disclaimer to say smart controller accounts may be subject to a random review of an account in water usage to ensure that we are meeting our goals and objectives of water conservation. I don't understand what that is. It's not asking anyone to do it. It doesn't burden manpower or resources. It's in the event that there is an account or somebody who is, a regular rule breaker, it just gives that opportunity to look at it.
I'm good with that disclaimer as a warning. It's fine.
You're good with the disclaimer? You're good with the disclaimer?
I'm good with the
Okay.
disclaimer as long as we're not spending.
It's not a disclaimer, it's a notice.
It's a notice.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
notice. Fine.
Yeah, as long as we're not spending time and manpower. Again, if somebody comes in with a complaint and says, Boyd Loving is violating his smart controller, then I think we should definitely go after him.
This all takes time, and when we start involving more violations and court time to prove things beyond just exceeding a time limit at night,
That's what
it's
I'm
going
saying.
to involve a whole nother.
That's why I'm saying, is that program really worth it to get involved?
Yeah, well, if you're saying it takes time, if that notice is going to create manpower issues, then I'm not in favor of it. If it doesn't create manpower issues, then I'm fine with it. But if you think it creates manpower issues, as we've talked about before, why are we doing it?
It just puts
At
people
least
on
if,
notice.
yeah,
It
if
all it
it's
does is
in
put-
there, you have the right then to do something if you find something.
Does the applicant have the right to appeal it? What?
I'll put it this way. If there's a notice and if there's a change, you don't have to give them that. It's just it's a privilege. It's not a right to have a smart controller.
You're
It's a
revoking the
privilege.
permit.
Yeah, and you can cut your water usage and your bills if you do this, and that's your privilege.
Yeah.
If you misuse it, you lose it, and there isn't any right to an appeal. But I think if you're going to take the position, we've got to carefully word that notice about how how it's going to be reviewed and the ramifications if it gets if there's a problem seen.
So I keep hearing that
We can work on it.
you agree with the recommendations that include incentives. Do you want to
Yeah,
provide
let's go back to the
incentive or not?
incentives.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
An incentive for people to buy a smart controller.
So you're saying the incentive is to give a credit back on their bill?
Yeah, that was just one of the things I mentioned in the beginning. I just wanted to be clear if it's
Yeah.
no or.
I don't think
If you're
that's a...
saving, if you're saving water.
Yeah.
I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. Lots of people save water, and they're conservationists with or without a smart controller. With or without a smart controller, they follow rules for water conservation. And if the smart controller is the measure of conservation and garners someone a credit back on their bill, I think it's fundamentally unfair because there are people who don't have smart controllers that actively engage in caring about their environment and conserving water. So I disagree wholly with any kind of credit back or anything.
So if I can work with Mr. Rogers to redraft an ordinance for you all to look at, based on all the input
Yes.
tonight.
I think that would be terrific, Rich.
I think I have an idea where you want to go.
Yep.
Matt does as well. We'll try to present that to you as soon as time
Thanks so
allows.
much for giving us a very clear picture of what's going on. Because now we understand it, whereas before I didn't know what the universe was like. Now I know what the universe is like.
Okay.
Thank you
Good.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks. So the next item is parking permits. This evening, you had this bigger schedule, so if you could look at the bigger one. At this point, we are charging $1,325 for premium resident and non-resident, as well as non-premium, we're charging $1,000. The proposal is to go to $1,375 for premium and $1,040 for resident. These are resident premium and resident non-premium. And then for non-resident premium would be $1,445, and non-resident non-premium would be $1,090. So it would be a 5% increase between residents and non-residents. So that's up for discussion.
I actually think we should be rolling prices back, not increasing, especially in today's economic environment. People are really, really, really struggling to put food on the table, to buy milk, to buy eggs, and I was just at a diaper drive the other day because people can't even afford diapers. I don't know why we're increasing prices.
I agree. I mean, the garage is empty. Let's cut back and let's fill the garage. Let's let people use it. And then maybe they'll like using it, and if things get better, then they'll pay more. I can't see going through another year having it empty. And I think we need to be more competitive with other towns. Do we know, I know people go to Glen Rock, people go to Hohokus, if it's more, more convenient, if they're on the border of Ridgewood and Hohokus, Ridgewood and Glen Rock. But for a lot of people in Ridgewood, they're still going to Hohokus and Glen Rock because it's less expensive. I don't know what the prices are, but I think we need to be more competitive. Do you know what the price is?
They're less, I can tell you that. I don't know what
Right, I know
families they
it's
are.
less. I don't know.
Then again, Hohokus doesn't have very much parking at all, and Glen Rock does charge a difference to non-residents, but I don't.
But how much does Glen Rock charge?
I have no idea. I can
Yeah.
find that out.
Yeah, I would like to know.
I mean, I'm mindful, we have a parking utility that we support, we have debt service that we have to, I mean, we have stuff that we cover that other municipalities don't have.
Correct.
My only concern at right now is increasing at all, and while $25 doesn't, or I'm sorry, $50 doesn't seem like a lot, it is for people. And the non-resident premium, which we're trying to fill, I agree, we're trying to fill the space in, especially the garage, so
Right, I mean, we had 425 permits issued in 2016 and 87 last year. Am I reading this right?
Yeah, but, you cannot compare.
No, I get it.
Those, the pre-2020, or the pre-2021 numbers, while they are certainly interesting and show us a point that we'd like to be at and we were once at, have absolutely no bearing on 21 and 22. And I'm not saying that it's price or not price, but from what I've gathered, price is the smallest factor here.
I disagree, because a lot of people are going back to work 2-3 days a week, and they're not going to pay these prices that are for parking 5 days a week if they're only going in 2 days.
Well, I think that's an even better point, actually. Can we offer a permit that is by the number of days per week? Because that's really becoming the new normal.
That
We
would
have a
probably
daily
be
permit.
impossible to enforce. I don't know.
We have a daily permit.
I'm sorry?
We have a daily permit.
And it's not very well explained on the website, and it says you can, the ordinance says you can sign up online, but I couldn't figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's the area that says click and park, but maybe we can call it something else. That's the way that it's given to us by the vendor, but we can probably try to, do something below it to explain it.
Tell me about the daily permit.
You must be a Ridgewood resident, so you must get the sticker that is free, that goes in your car. Then you go on to the website, our website, where it says parking, and it says click and park, and you click on that. You choose the day or days that you want the 1 day permit. It's $20 a day. And then you go from there and you pay online. I believe what happens is you get something to print out and you put that on your dashboard.
I think that people who go in 2 days a week, 1 day a week, 3 days a week, and again, I'm going by the people I know who do this, and I know almost everybody I know is now working like that. They don't want to go on every day to buy a permit. They want to have the permit, and it's not going to be the same day every week.
Well, they can also park in the train station if they're Ridgewood residents and pay by Park Mobile or by the kiosk as long as they have that sticker.
Right. What I'm suggesting is that we take another look at this and see if we can adapt to the current times and figure out a way so that people can buy a 2-day-a-week permit, a 1-day-a-week permit, a 3-day-a-week permit, a 5, so that it's to suit their needs, because this is a matter of convenience. They
How
don't
could
want.
you
Enforcement
that?
might be a little difficult.
I don't know. What
I-
I'm saying is, let's look at it
We can look at it.
and try and, I mean, again, we're going to sit here and try and figure this out here. I think that we have a lot of professionals. Maybe there's a way to do it, maybe there isn't, but let's look at that, because that's what people want now.
Can I just want to offer a different perspective. It would seem to me that in anticipation of a garage build, we were building up these costs because we knew that was part of the Walker report. Walker, right? It was a Walker
Right.
report. And it would seem to me that if we went in 2017 on the first increase from 750 to 1,000, and we look at those increases from 2016 to 17, and we actually increased the total number of permits sold from 425 to 446. So then we go to 2018, and we went up significantly. We went up a lot at that point, and we went down to 389. Then we increased. We go down to 337, 333. I almost feel like we're better off, never mind that this day, that day, and I'm only going 2 or 3 or 4 days a week, and the administration of that and the enforcement of that, I think, is going to be just a disaster. It's going to be impossible, and it'll just be a mess. And I think we'd have to ask Bob Rooney, what if we rolled back for 1 year to, we're better off to sell 300 passes at the permits at the $1,000 than to sell the 150 at the 1,500. We're way ahead of the game to do the opposite. So if we were to reduce the price and encourage people to come back and start to use it and roll those numbers back, we're better off to sell more for slightly less, because at the end you'll actually
Make more money.
make more money.
And that's not, and I don't have a problem with rolling back the prices, but I don't believe the vast majority of people want a 5-day permit. That's the problem. So if you're going in 2 days a week, you're not going to buy a 5-day permit. Let's sell them what they want. Let's see if there's a way that we can do this. I'm less concerned about somebody saying, I'm going to get a 3-day-a-week permit, and I'm going to use it 5 days a week. They're not going in 5 days a week right now. And I think it's a year-to-year thing. I think that the idea of rolling it back so we can encourage people, that's a good idea. But selling them a 5-day-a-week permit, they're going to go, what am I going to do with this?
You're not selling them a 5-day-a-week permit. You're actually just selling a parking permit. Use it when you need it. And I think that we've always experienced people who have worked a couple of days a week. I know people who bought the permit. They bought it in the most convenient lot for their needs, but they didn't always work full-time hours. So I don't think that you should begin a system of prorating based on how many days you use, how many days you don't use. I think it's an enforcement nightmare. I've been doing this long enough to say it's an enforcement nightmare.
And when you have a permit, you can use it whenever. It's good for Saturdays.
Right,
It's good for
right,
nights.
exactly.
So it's
So
good anytime.
what if
It's
it
not
were-
just.
What if it were you buy a booklet of 20, and each day you use it, you put a ticket in the window, and we know then that you've paid for it?
That, again.
And then how do you collect that ticket so they
Yeah.
don't use it again?
Right.
So I just think that maybe we have to put our heads together. And I mean, I'm not saying dismiss the 3-day. I just think it's just a nightmare to enforce, to administer. I just think that adds a different element to something, that's difficult already. But if we could go back on pricing and sell more for less, we may in fact not only make money, but start to see a change. And maybe we just do it for the first couple of months of sales and just say this is this, and then it's going to revert back and see, if people purchase.
I'd like to explore both avenues. Park Mobile may have dealt with this before, whether somebody can sign up for 2 days a week or 3 days a week. I don't want to just give up on it.
But the permits are not through Park
Yeah,
Mobile.
that's not through Park Mobile.
Yeah.
The permits are through us.
I'm not saying there's a way to do it, I'm saying that we haven't looked for a way to do it.
Fair.
Let's take a couple of weeks and bring this to our next meeting.
We just
And-
have to, okay, that's fine. We just need to get it introduced so that we can sell these permits
I'm
in
sorry?
December. We need to move forward so
Oh,
that
no,
we can, and we
I
have
said
to
next
set a
meeting.
price.
I didn't say,
I know, but we may have to act on it that meeting so that we can get it adopted in November, so it's effective, so we can sell these permits in December, so people are ready to go for January.
I understand completely. All I'm
Okay.
saying is, we have a lot of smart people working for us.
We do.
I have a feeling there may be a way to do this, and I don't want to dismiss it before we've even tried to think about it.
Yeah, the enforcement is going to be the difficult part.
I understand, but we have enforcement. We'll look at this. Maybe there's an avenue through Park Mobile. I don't know.
Well, they can pay through Park Mobile and park a couple of days a week, right? Right.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
or
they
they
can
could
already do
pay,
that.
or
People-
they could pay at the
Yeah,
kiosk
I
a
mean, it
couple days a
actually
week.
works out to the same, basically the
That's
same
what I'm saying,
pricing.
right.
So it saves a couple of dollars to do.
I mean, if you pay, I just checked, if you pay 20, if you go in twice a week and do the daily rate at $20, it comes out to $2,080 a year.
So you're better off to do this.
You're better
You're
off
better off
to do
to
the
do a
permit,
permit.
which is why it's always been less than what the meters are.
But I also have another question. You had said the day pass is for residents only.
Correct.
Why? Well, if somebody else wants to come and pay $20, why don't we let them?
Because that's not what we've done in the past. However, we could. It's just
Yeah,
not the way
let's-
it's set up
I mean, if
currently.
anybody wanted to, if somebody from another town is coming in and wants to go to the city with their friend, you know, if they want
How
to
does the day pass work?
You need a Ridgewood resident sticker. I mean, they have to get that sticker.
And then what
So-
happens?
And then I told you, you go online, you purchase the pass, you get a certificate, and it goes on your dashboard, and it gives the date. So it's that date. You pick a date, or 2 dates, or 5 dates, or whatever.
I thought it was $10.
I have a feeling that our professionals can figure out a way to adapt that day pass model to a 2-day-a-week model or a 3-day-a-week model, so that they can get those passes and print them out at home. I just have a feeling there is, and maybe I'm completely incorrect. All I'm saying is,
We can look at it.
let's take a
Sure.
look at it.
Sure, we can do that.
So we want two things. So we want to look at whether or not it's feasible to
Right.
do a 2-day, 3-day-a-week pass permit. And then we also want to have an analysis done on what would happen if we rolled back the prices to, I guess, the 2017 price, at least for the first 3 months of purchase, to see if we can, or just for the year, to see if we can increase those numbers, because it does look like we were seeing that drop-off after the price was going up so much. So like I said, I think it's better to sell more passes for less than significantly less for more. Because
So
of
my
the-
question is also, do you want to continue to give non-residents the same price for premium and non-premium?
Yeah, I think so for this year, because we want to get those numbers back up.
Okay. And then the question is, we waited until the third week in January to sell those passes, the non-resident passes, because we gave our residents, and we still got several non-residents coming in.
I think we
Let
should just
everybody.
start from the gate.
Yeah.
Let everybody, this is the day everything goes on sale. Here's what we have. Start buying.
Right.
Does
Just
everyone
saying.
agree?
I think we want to, I don't know about
If
anyone
we
else.
fill
I
up, we celebrate.
think- Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure everyone agrees so that we can move forward. So the non-residents and residents come at the same time.
And that's just for this year, 2023.
Well, you'll evaluate it next year.
Yeah.
Then you'll revisit it and decide whether or not you are accommodating our village resident needs and still able to have other non-residents use it. And if you're making your numbers and you're not impacting the ability of Ridgewood residents to purchase the passes, then why not? You just keep moving forward.
Okay, we'll bring it back. The next item is awarding contracts, sodium bisulfate solution and sodium hypochlorite. This is for our water pollution control facility. We received bids, 5 holders of the plans and specifications, 3 responding bids. One of the bids was incomplete. The apparent low bidder, Miracle Chemical Company, submitted the complete bid package. They've successfully supplied chemicals to the village in the past. This year's bid has the option to extend it for an additional year with the consent of both parties. Cost for chemicals has gone up considerably. The sodium bisulfate cost and the sodium hypochlorite cost have both increased. They've almost doubled. So the recommendation is to award the contract to Miracle Chemical Company of Farmingdale, New Jersey, not to exceed $156,239, and this is paid through the Water Pollution Control Facility's operating budget.
Any questions? Nope.
Next is an award of contract for additional tree planting. The Village Council, as you know, already awarded the contract to Downs Tree Service for tree planting throughout the village. The Parks Department has money in their budget for 32 additional trees to be planted. Change order number 1 is for $16,845 to the original low bidder, Downs Tree Service of Hawthorne, New Jersey. It will be paid through the 2022 capital budget, and the hope is to plant the trees this fall.
I'm going to recuse myself from this matter.
Okay.
I'm in favor of this, provided we have sufficient staff, an arborist, to oversee the planting, to make sure that the contractor is doing it right. I think that's important. I don't want them to be unsupervised.
Okay.
Is every tree in the village that's planted being supervised, do you know, Pam?
I think so.
Every tree?
That's my understanding.
I'm not sure if with all these trees we're planting, these hundreds of trees, that there's someone every time who's there. I mean, I can double check that, but I don't think that's the case.
But don't we have like a guarantee on the tree? Like we have
Usually guarantees for 1 year. What if it dies
Well,
in year 2?
isn't there a procedure that they have to follow, though? I mean, well, certainly I know with the CBD and the tree wells, there's a certain
Yeah.
procedure they have to
Right.
follow. With the regular street planting, is
It's
there?
a big Megillah, even with the regular street planting, because they have to check out all the utilities and marking it out and everything.
Well, they have to do that anyway. I mean,
Right.
Downs is the contractor who's already planted many trees this year.
But I
So
mean,
it's the same
everyone has to
contractor.
have a gator bag on it, is that
Right.
correct? Okay.
I mean, okay,
Do we know when this would start, or it's just continuous?
continuous. And we have to award it, so we won't be awarding it till the 12th. So it won't be till after that.
I see.
They're trying to plant as many as they can this year. Okay. The next one is the disposal of recyclable materials. So this is awarding the first one-year option for the disposal of recyclable material to the original lowest bidder, and the best, actually it wasn't the lowest bidder, it was the best suited towards Ridgewood, which is Atlantic Coast Fibers, LLC of Passaic, New Jersey. Because it's a recycling contract, it does not have to be bid by state statute. Okay?
Are they subcontracting out since the fire?
Yes, we have an agreement with them through 2 facilities in the city of Newark that are accepting both our commingle and our fibers. They expect that their plant in Passaic will be breaking ground sometime next year. I don't have an idea of how long it's going to take to rebuild, but I imagine it'll be sometime late 24, 25 that we start going back to Passaic.
And what are those 2 facilities in Newark?
The one is waste management, that they're accepting our commingle, and the fibers are going to Yes Recycling. It stands for Your Environmental Solutions.
Environmental solutions.
Yes.
I thought you
Yes, recycling.
Okay.
So waste management is getting, which one of those?
Commingle for
Commingle.
waste management and fibers at Yes Recycling.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one is an additional funding for fuel. This is under state contract to Michelle's of Clifton, New Jersey. It's not to exceed $235,000. This is funded out of the operating budget. Obviously, it's due to the rising cost of fuels. And it's been determined that our fuel use has remained consistent. However, the price has just gone up, as we all know.
We're over a barrel.
The next one is awarding a contract for the installation of vehicle tracking software. Since 2018, we've tracked over 100 village vehicles utilizing online software from Vehicle Tracking Solutions. We've integrated the software into our daily operations. Examples include fast-tracking response to customer emergent requests using the system that locates the closest vehicle to the address of the customer. The other is verifying accident and incident data by reviewing vehicle track, speed, and stop times, monitoring snow plowing operations, and answering customer complaints on the number of times the plow passed and vehicle speed, verifying and trending sanitation and recycling trips to the transfer stations. So this is a recommendation to continue with vehicle tracking solutions under the Bergen County contract to SHI of Somerset, New Jersey. And this is funded through the various departmental operating budgets. As I said, and this is an amount not to exceed $30,512.40. Currently, it's 100 vehicles. We're looking at 120 vehicles for next year, up to 120 in this year's contract, which goes from July through June of next year. This has been very beneficial. I know, there are times they say a plow is speeding by and we look and it's 25 miles an hour. It's just that as it rumbles by in the snow and the ice and the plow, it sounds like it's going a lot faster. I know Mr. Calby has headed up this project since the beginning, so if you do have any other questions, he is definitely the expert. No questions?
No,
Okay.
I think it's a good, I like it. I think it's great.
And you say it's a portion between the various departments, because I
Correct.
see that Ridgewood Water has 31 vehicles.
Correct, we have the most. There's a breakdown on the second sheet by department. Each department gets charged to their operating budget based on the number of vehicles they have.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. The next one is declaring property surplus. This is for various vehicles and equipment the village has and are no longer mechanically viable. Many have extensive corrosion and expensive repair needs. So instead of having them decay further, we'd like to try to sell them on GovDeals, which is an online auction, and this way we'll get some value back for the village. As I had mentioned at last week's meeting, our most recent auction, we made approximately $36,000 for vehicles of a similar nature, so it's nice to get some money back for those vehicles.
Okay, any questions?
Not I.
Okay. The next one is sidewalk replacement program and tree removals. Thank you, Mr. Calby. So this is Yendi Anderson's second memo that she had sent, which I had sent out to you earlier. It does show the number of permits obtained between 2017 to 2022, tree-related sidewalk permit summary, repeated sidewalk permits obtained, and cost of slabs based on 3 local contractor reports. I know that the one thing that is missing from this report is ramp overs. I did speak with Declan Madden, our arborist, and he said that every year approximately 4 to 5 on average are ramp overs. And he said 50% to 75% of those needing ramp overs don't want to pay the cost to do so. So 50% to 75% of the 4 to 5 per year who don't want the ramp overs because it's too costly. So this year, it's only 2, and one was not on South Irving. Is South Irving the one? So it's not on South Irving, and one is on South Irving. So the one not on South Irving, did we do a ramp over? The other one was not going to, but now we're looking at the pervious pavement for that.
Okay. Any questions?
And then, for those that don't want to pay, that's when the tree has to be removed entirely, right?
Well, the issue becomes that for a lot of these, if they grind the roots because it is uplifting the sidewalk already, that it becomes unstable. The tree becomes unstable. So therefore, the tree is going to either topple over or die, and so that's when it becomes the issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think we were allowing grinding anymore. I thought that was not an option.
No, we still grind.
You still
We still
grind?
grind roots.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought because it really does.
It doesn't always destabilize a tree. At times, it just cuts them back. You know?
So it's on a case-by-case basis? They look at it,
Yes.
and if they feel it's okay
It's
to grind?
evaluated by the arborist as to, what the best route is to go. So this kind of also relates to number 2, which is the update amendment to the tree ordinance, because this then describes what exactly you want to put into that tree ordinance, because the ordinance does not say you can automatically take down a healthy tree, which is what someone had mentioned or something to that effect. So there is nothing in there that says that. However, it does say that the arborist must approve a removal of a tree, I think, something to that effect. So,
does this, I just want to make sure that, and I know we talked about this, that if a homeowner doesn't want to pay for the cost of the concrete removal, that does not necessitate removal of that tree, of a healthy tree. Am I accurate or am I inaccurate?
it's mostly with the ramp overs where this occurs, because by grinding the roots, it's going to destabilize the tree.
So at the end of the day, is there a situation where whether it's a ramp over or any other fix, if the homeowner doesn't want to pay for the ramp over, will the tree be removed?
Well, that's why this is what we have to discuss, is how are we going to go forward, because at times those trees are currently healthy and they are removed because if they're going to stay there and not lift up the sidewalk, the roots will have to be ground, and that will destabilize the tree, which will then lead to its demise anyway.
I'm sorry. I think that obviously, I think we're in concert that we don't want that situation, so we have to come up with a solution.
Correct.
Because here, if you just look, forgetting for just a moment about the tree itself, the cost of removing a tree that size is probably or possibly going to be in excess of the cost of the ramp over.
And that's on us.
And that's on us. So there is some solution here that we must undertake.
Right, so I don't know if you want to say the village will pay for half and the homeowner pays for half, or that, this is something that you need to discuss and come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I think that we have a perfectly healthy tree. We're spending a fortune to restore a tree canopy. We're planting trees, and we have a perfectly healthy tree. Somebody doesn't want to pay for something because it's an exorbitant cost. And so instead of us leaning in and funding a part of it, we're going to then foot the bill to cut the tree down. So it makes no sense. So my opinion is that in our tree budget, and especially given that we have I'm kind of curious, though, and before I continue, though, on those 88 tree removals, I just want to make sure I'm looking at all the right thing. On the 88 tree removals, how many of those were because somebody didn't want to pay for a...
Well, again, he said the average is 4 to 5.
Yeah,
So 50% to 75%.
So, these tree removals could have been any...
Correct.
They were
Could have
most
been
of
dead
the
trees,
Emerald
could have
Ash
been-
were.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it actually says total documented tree-related sidewalk work performed. So the question, if we have these 88 trees listed on this list, based on just the sentence, it looks like the 88 trees from 2017 to 2022, because it's saying tree-related sidewalk work, trees removed 88. So it's not just trees that maybe...
But some of the trees that have lifted sidewalks may be dead.
Right,
or
my
disease.
question, and I guess that's the question, do we track how many good trees were cut down as a result of someone deciding?
Again, it's 50% of the 4 to 5. That's my understanding. It's
So in
mostly
other
the
words,
ramp.
then 50% of
ups.
the 88 would be a fair analysis then?
I don't
think so.
know.
No.
because that could also be people who needed to expand the size of their driveway.
Right.
You can't really draw
It's all
that
different reasons
conclusion.
that the trees are removed. It's not 50% of the 88.
Here, I'm looking at numbers a little further down. Average total of tree removals per year, 15. Average total of roundouts per year, 8. Root grinding per year, 19. So I think we're looking at that number, 23, 42
Well, it's
or so
42, yeah.
that we need to consider.
Right,
And-
that's consistent
and I'll-
with the
I'll throw
88.
some-
Right,
Yeah, I'll
that's
throw something
consistent.
out there. What if we said that a homeowner is responsible for the cost of a slab or whatever, a flat fee, and in consideration of that, because again, it is a limited number each year, that the village picks up the tab for the rest. So now we're not burdening the homeowner with this. We're preserving our tree canopy. We're actually saving ourselves money.
Money, right.
And so this way, it is not an unreasonable amount for a homeowner to pay. And I seem to remember it was something in the $400 to $500 range for a slab. So
It depends on how much slab.
and again, we speak to our professionals about this, find out how much that is, and then the village picks up the rest of the tab. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I agree, and the 50% of the 15, which I was looking at over the 6 years, 5 years, 6 years was 88, so we go to the average per year 15, so half of that 7 trees that we're footing the bill for, trees that are removed, I mean, it seems to me that it becomes a better policy to fund the difference of the ramp over or the round out to save a healthy tree. And actually, we are saving money.
I would limit it to the ramp overs.
No, yeah. So if anybody needs to have their roots ground and they need to replace sidewalks, that's on them, because that's what everybody
The
has to
round
do.
outs.
Right.
The ramp overs or the round outs, let's just say the tree could have been, the roots could have been ground and they needed 4 sidewalks, 4 slabs. Whatever the cost of that would have been, that's what the homeowner should pay, and the village pays the difference for the round out or the ramp over.
Not the round out. I think
Not the
we're
round out,
talking
just the ramp overs.
Oh, just the ramp over?
Now,
Yeah.
why do you think?
Isn't the round out more
It's
expensive?
usually 1 or 2 slabs for the round out.
Yeah, that's
And the ramp over needs the height going up it.
It needs a long.
Because
For ADA.
of the
You
grading
need to go
requires
back
more
further.
slabs. And just to simplify the process, what if we make it a flat fee? Whatever that number is.
It varies though, because sidewalk used to be like 300, they're up to 600. a
I
slab.
understand, let's go with today's numbers. Whatever that number is, and we pick a number, whether it's 400 or 500 or 600, so that it's simple, it's straightforward, it's understandable, it's not whether it's a round out or a ramp up that, we're all still trying to, capture the lingo. And then the village picks up the balance of the tab, which again, at the end of the day, it's simple, it's straightforward, saves money, saves not only trees, but the big, beautiful, mature trees that we're not planting any of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should do that.
Okay.
I mean, as far as, I thought the round out?
Ramp over?
No, not the ramp over, the round out. I thought even, so in order, and I'm just, want to go back to that, I thought the round out
It's more expensive.
is still more expensive because where you may have only had to replace two slabs, because the length of it is actually costing more. So I think I agree.
No, it just goes around the tree, is
But
what
it still
happens.
costs more because you have to,
No.
it's more.
It costs more because it's
It's a longer
rounded rather
stretch.
than
Oh,
straight.
then just two slabs, of course,
Right,
yes.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about more
So
than the
maybe we
ramp
should
over.
have a flat fee for the difference from the round out, and then a flat fee that we apply, like a credit, like for the.
I think one flat fee, and again, whether it's $500 or $600, and then,
Right,
and,
then we can
and the,
only do a
and,
ramp up.
and the process would be something along the lines of the homeowner does it, presents us with a bill for it. They have basically it's like having an insurance policy of a $500 deductible, and we pay them the rest.
Do you want to do a flat fee per slab?
No, it gets
But
complicated.
some people may need 3 slabs, some people may need 6 slabs.
Fine, they're paying $500. We're paying the rest, whatever it is.
In
That's a lot for
conversation
the
with
village.
But people will. But now it goes back to the burden on people to say, well, instead of $500, it might be $1,500. And that was part of the issue that was raised in discussing this, is placing an undue burden on homeowners for the cost of replacing their sidewalk.
But everybody's responsible for replacing their sidewalks, so that
right.
like benefits the person that's going to not do the ramp
Can we just
over. It's
let-
going to cost them more money.
Can we just listen to Pam, because I think she has an insightful.
In conversation at the Shade Tree Commission last meeting with Declan Madden, our arborist, he was not as concerned about the roundouts because those aren't the ones that the customers, the residents are complaining about. It's the ramp overs that are burdensome. I think psychologically, if a resident feels that the village is meeting them halfway and is willing to pay half, they see that as reasonable. And I don't think a flat fee strikes them that way.
I'm going to go with Pam's recommendation here, because I think that has a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think half is fine.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then it's the same. It's 50%.
And then next year, we don't have to look at whether we've miscalculated the astronomical rise of cement, of
Right.
concrete.
Exactly.
Right.
Right, okay.
No, I
So
think
I'm sorry, you're
that's right.
saying
So now,
half for a round out.
No,
What about?
No,
Ramp
ramp
over.
over.
For
not-
ramp
forget
over.
the-
Ramp
Forget the
over
round
only.
out. Forget the round out.
So this only applies to a ramp over.
And that's
Right.
primarily because of the length that you need to get to that
Yes.
rise to the elevation.
That's right.
And at the cost.
now, are we talking about half of the entire project or half the difference in what it would have been for a flat slab?
So
I
I think that whatever the cost is for the flat to replace, the difference for the ramp over is what we should absorb. Does that make sense? Or
I don't know how
kind
you'd
of-
calculate
Well, I
that,
kind of
though.
agree with Paul that we should just have a flat credit, a flat fee, and this is what we're going to give, and it's out of the shade tree budget, because in the long run, we're saving money and we're not losing unnecessarily perfectly healthy trees. We're saving trees. It's going to cost us anyway.
Well, nobody's going to be allowed to take down a
I
healthy tree,
understand that,
right? I mean,
but nonetheless, we have to be cognizant of the cost burden to folks when they have to put in this costly ramp over to accommodate the route. So why don't we do this? Because we're kind of, I think, a little bit maneuvering in blindly here because we don't actually know what the cost is and how many ramps. So
Right.
I think that may be something we can get from Declan.
We know how many ramps. It's 4 to 5 a year. You're saying how many slabs? It depends on the pitch of the of the sidewalks.
It can
why
be
don't we
several
ask-
$1,000s.
Sure.
So why don't we ask Declan to come up with a formula as to what would be an equitable solution to allow us to save healthy trees while lessening the burden shouldered by the residents who have to install these costly ramp overs. So he must have an idea of what the cost is. That's how we should approach this. Once we have an idea.
I
But
would like his input,
I
yeah.
think we should have his input.
But I think besides a dollar figure, it really needs to be a percentage. Because, as Pam said, costs could go up exponentially.
And we can, by the
So
way.
it needs to be 40%, 50%, whatever we're going to
do that. We say
decide.
50.
But we can always update this as costs escalate. And here's the thing. If it's a $2,500 job, now you're talking about $1,250 to the homeowner.
Right.
That was one of several considerations here. That's a big number. This is, I mean, if we're spending $600 per planting for a tree with a 4-inch diameter, these are not trees with 4-inch diameters. These are big trees. It is cost effective at the end of the day. It is simple and straightforward. Whatever that number is that we decide upon, it's straightforward. It's not burdensome. The homeowner is still paying, but it's not burdensome to them.
Right, and it may be a 50%, and maybe, what was that?
Sorry. It's my umbrella.
That must be a heavy umbrella. It's
I
quite
say
the
it's
thumb.
got to be,
It
whatever the
needs a ramp over.
percentage is, it needs a percentage instead of a dollar
Well, let's
figure.
get it from Declan,
Okay.
and then we can move
Okay.
forward. Good, all right, moving on.
All right, so the next one is, sorry, I have the next page. This is the administration of government. As Mr. Loving pointed out at our last meeting, it has changed due to the fact that we are now electing our village council members in November. So the reorganization meeting will state during the first week of January in odd-numbered years. The village council shall hold a reorganization meeting for the election of mayor, deputy mayor, and president pro tem. And then it goes on in A to show that the village council shall assemble at Village Hall for a reorganization meeting and elect one of the village council members as mayor. Shall be nominated by a village council member by a motion second, followed by a roll call vote. More than one village council member may be nominated for mayor. Same process. Once all nominations for mayor have been made, seconded, and voted on, the nominations will be closed. All members of the village council shall then vote on all of those nominated for mayor. The mayor shall then be chosen from those nominated by majority roll call vote of the village council. If the village council shall be unable to elect it, then it goes to what was previously in the code, who were in the last the council member who in the last municipal election received the greatest number of votes, and should such person decline, then it's the next greatest number of votes. At the same time the mayor is elected, the village council shall elect one of the village council members as deputy mayor. The same process is used. At the same time as the mayor and deputy mayor are elected, the village council shall elect one of the village council members as president pro tem. The process is the same. Vacancies in the office of mayor, deputy mayor shall be filled by the village council for the remainder of the unexpired term. And I guess we should put president pro temp in there too. So if the mayor resigns, then or vacant, that seat is vacant, then it would be replaced by the deputy mayor. If the deputy mayor is vacant, that would be replaced by the president pro temp. And then if the president pro temp, it would go through the same process of being nominated and voted on by the village council. So in the next section, the only thing that was changed, instead of council, it says village council. In number 5, it says resolutions which have been adopted by the village council. And then in number 6, it adds that the mayor has such other functions, powers, and duties as the charter or the village council, subject to the charter or state statute, may from time to time prescribe. Because there's times that state statute may prescribe a duty for the mayor. So I think this covers everything. So as long as you're all okay with it, which we should do it since things have changed.
I have a question.
Sure.
At the top of page 2,
Yes.
letter A,
Yes.
it says, then the village council member who in the last municipal election for village council, who received the greatest number of votes.
Right.
So what about the council members who were elected in the prior?
So if that's how you want to word that for mayor, or even deputy mayor, that's fine.
I think that opens it up to everyone. And while this is an incredibly unlikely scenario, this limits it to only those 2 or 3, depending upon when it is, council members who were just elected.
So then you would determine the percentage of votes, I guess, at each election. Because this is if they can't decide, if they can't get a majority.
Right.
This is the only time this comes into play.
I understand.
Okay.
Again, an incredibly unlikely scenario, and I think if the word "last" was taken out,
Or if you put in the last 2.
the last 2,
And Heather, it's not the percentage, it's the greatest number of votes.
right?
So I don't think you can do that either, because you have,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Because you have different numbers of people voting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You have different numbers of people voting at different a presidential election. You're going to have a much greater number of people voting than you're going to have at a midterm election or an election with very few other besides local offices are being voted on.
Percentage sounds
Plus,
fair.
and it would be the last 2 elections would only be the people voted now and the people voted when Paul ran, because
So
you
then
had the 3 elections.
in this instance, it would be the last 3 elections.
Right.
So I think we need some language that says in the elections in which the current council members were
I'm
most
actually-
recently elected.
Yeah, I'm not interested in changing it myself, so I think this is how it's been all along.
It has been.
It's been this way for forever. I think it's perfectly fine the way it is. So I'm not supporting any changes to this. This is all we did. All our effort was to redo this to be reflective of the November elections for January reorg.
I agree. I think it's fine to remain as is.
Yeah,
the change,
it is, the fact that it's been this way for 1,000 years doesn't make it, I mean, there's clearly a flaw in this, because it limits to actually the most junior
That's true.
people elected to the council. Not that they would not be the most obvious choice, but again, you're limiting those people.
Yeah, I'm not interested in changing it myself. I think that, I'm just not interested in changing it at all, so.
I had the same question as Paul. It seemed like an unnecessary limitation to look only at the most recent election. But how often is this going to come into
It's
play?
probably never, ever going to happen.
Probably never, but it's incorrect.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's been done this way and may never have come into play doesn't make it right. And when you say you're not interested in it, again, that's not a reason to not do it. I mean, it's a small change, and it opens the floor to all members of the council, as opposed to only the 2 who are elected at the last election.
But we now have changed it because, we had 2 elections, and we have to add the last 3 elections, and so I just think, you know what, it is this way forever, and it's never come into place. I think it's fine the way it is.
We don't have to number the elections. It's the elections of those sitting council members.
Okay.
We're changing it now anyway. Why not make it better?
I'm good the way it is.
I'm not.
All right.
I
I'm
don't
fine
think
the
we're
way
gonna
it
reach
is.
a I don't think we're going to have a majority here, so, it can wait for another day.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just going to take this part out?
What do you mean?
You want to just take that part out altogether?
We're
No.
going to leave it in exactly the way it's always been, when there's not changing it.
Okay.
Because it limits it to who, so if that were to occur in this next election, then only those people who are elected in that election in this rare circumstance would be eligible, correct?
Correct.
And I don't see a reason why that should be limited like that.
I agree with you, Paul, but I think we need 5 people on the council to make that decision.
Okay. So
So leave it with the additions.
I'll leave it as
is.
is for now, that part, and then it can be discussed after the election in January. But it could affect what happens in January.
It could affect, and so, I don't, by leaving it, by leaving this as is really, it makes no sense to leave this amendment as proposed, none at all. And so I oppose this amendment as it is currently set forth,
Right.
and I will not vote for it.
All right.
To oppose it, it doesn't pass.
Okay, so we'll just leave it as is, because that's how it's written now.
Well, except that you are amending it from what it is right now to change the dates on it.
Right?
And
Right, you're doing.
Right, but I'm not voting to amend it.
I
is
know,
what
I
I'm saying.
understand. So does it, I don't know that it passes or can be, I don't know if it could be introduced without a majority of the council to introduce it.
Right.
So it
I guess
just,
there's no
so
reorg.
nothing
We'll have
happens,
to
it
wait
just
until
stays,
July.
it just stays as written in the code right now, and you can't change it.
Right.
So,
It's an interesting conundrum.
Okay, so
it goes nowhere.
so I will do nothing, I guess, until January.
I'm sorry?
I guess I'll do nothing until January.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Next
Or you
one.
can put it on and just have the vote on the record.
Yeah, let's have the vote on
You could have the
record.
vote on the record to
Well,
introduce it.
if we, I think that, isn't that the purpose of the
Why?
public work session? We're airing our views.
Correct,
And
correct. I
if
agree.
there isn't a majority, it does not go on
It
the
doesn't go
agenda.
forward, right?
Well, there's, yeah, I think we can put it on the agenda and let it go to a vote and just record the vote.
When do we put something on the agenda that we know will not pass? We don't. And it's not as though there's no transparency here, because we're all stating our positions very clearly. We're spending a lot of time on something that I don't know that we should be spending time on.
I agree.
But yeah, I think we're done, and I don't think it goes on a public meeting agenda.
What I think I should do is to do 3.3-5, because that changes the date of the reorganization meeting. That I could do, because we have no choice
Well,
in that.
I think we have to introduce the whole thing as a whole, and so that's,
Well, it's different sections, so this is 3-5. And regardless, by state statute, you have to do it within the first 7 days. So it is
Right.
what it is. That's fine. We'll leave it as is.
yeah, even as is.
Okay, next one is political signs. So this section is the section of them being removed no later than 20 days after the date of the election. And then if it is a primary election, that any candidates who fail to remain as candidates after the primary, their sign should be removed no later than 10 days after the date of the primary election.
So I think we did this when we were working on this a while ago. Part of this was the signs, memorably in 2016, that were shoved in the planters and destroyed the flowers downtown. And so we started to work on this, say, to not be in the trees, the telephone poles, the tree wells or planters. That was the whole thing. I don't know when we added or amended that part, but I always knew that we had a conversation about the 20 days and 10 days, and I don't think that it should be on a time limit for signs. I mean, even though, right?
Well, I think if you look at what Heather gave us, this was the ordinance that was adopted back in 16.
Correct.
So that's when we looked at it, and that's when it was addressed.
Yeah.
Now, there is differing, positions constitutionally with regard to forcing the removal of political signs, because political signs are the most protected speech that you can possibly have. As it goes toward primaries, there is reasoning to not confuse the voter, so you want the primary candidates that did not win the primary to remove their signs fairly quickly. There's a lot of back and forth with regard to how much time you can leave up a political sign, because it is free speech. And it is, not free speech, it is a political speech which is protected. And, there's discussions in many of these constitutional cases about the right to be able to leave your signs if you support a candidate out there. I mean, somebody could keep a sign out right now for George W. Bush, and somebody could keep another sign out for Barack Obama right now and support those people and keep them on their lawns as long as it's on their private property. So, but you do have concerns and you do have reasoning that can go into these things for the aesthetics and for viewing areas and for not disrupting travelers and things like that. So the last time we looked at it, I think it was the 20 days that was used after the date of the election in which the candidate was considered for vote. Do we want to extend it? Do we want to leave it there? Do we want to give it a more open position?
So if the question, I guess, that was raised is if this were challenged, and we don't issue, I mean, there are folks that have campaign signs out for candidates all year long. If it's challenged, what happens?
Well, if it were to be challenged constitutionally, we might lose it, depending upon what the placement is, where the placement is, and the like.
I'm good with that. I would keep it the way it is, and if it's challenged and we go to court and we lose, then we lose. I am a huge free speech advocate. Nonetheless, I think that keeping up political signs year-round ad infinitum, I'm not good with that. And if somebody wants to challenge it, that is absolutely their right. And if a court orders us to allow them to keep them up forever, then we will follow the court order. But until that time, I'm good with this ordinance.
And again, our definition of a political sign is for an election. It's not about an issue. It's not about a concept or
right.
A program or something that you want to talk about. That somebody may want to talk about that has political ramifications. This is strictly for election signs.
So if somebody had a sign that said no CVS or whatever, that can be up as long as they want.
If somebody wanted to do that, they could put up a sign that could say something like that.
Mm-hmm.
No cannabis in Ridgewood or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Or that type of thing. So.
Okay.
Or Valley Hospital, or multifamily housing, or any of the issues that we've dealt with, parking garages. I'm good with that.
Yeah, and this is so okay.
This
So
doesn't apply to those
This is
issues.
only for election
candidate,
signs.
right? So if everybody's okay with it and we're comfortable with it, I guess we'll just leave it. It was an issue. It was a question that came up, and.
I do have a question. Would this be subject to strict scrutiny?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember the standard that is to be applied, but the constitutional standard to be applied. I just know that there are a number of cases there that have dealt with time periods and for election signs. And when we looked at this back in 16, the same discussion took place about whether or not it might be challenged and what might happen if it gets challenged, and we might lose. and it was felt 20 days was what the council wanted back then.
I
I don't
think-
remember the threshold. I don't remember whether it's strict
Okay.
scrutiny or anything else.
I think we have a valid government interest here to not have signs ad infinitum forever. And I don't know if we need a compelling state interest, compelling government interest, but I'm willing to stick with what we have.
Okay. Hang on one second.
So that's what the majority, it seems, is saying. Just stay with what we have, right? Okay. So the next item is next week's public meeting agenda. We have proclamations, National Diabetes Awareness Month, and declaring October National Bullying Prevention Month. We have no introduction or public hearings for Ridgewood Water. Resolutions, we have award contract under state contract, annual maintenance of chlorine, pH, and phosphate analyzers, awarding professional services contract for public policy consultant, and award sole source contract for furnace corrosion inhibitor. For introduction, we have 2022 management and non-union salary ordinances and 2023 management and non-union salary ordinances, and we're not going to do Chapter 3. No ordinances are up for public hearing. We have resolutions awarding a contract for disposal of recyclable materials, award additional partial award for 2022 road resurfacing and repairs, Title 59 approval and award of contract for furnishing and delivering sodium bisulfite and sodium hypochlorite solution for the Water Pollution Control Facility, Title 59 approval and award of contract for furnishing laboratory services for Water Pollution Control Facility and Graden Pool Facility, award contract under Bergen County contract vehicle tracking system, award contract under state contract gasoline and diesel fuel, authorize a change order for tree planting throughout the village of Ridgewood, award contract for sale of compost from Lakeview Compost Facility, Chapter 159, accepting the United States Department of Agricultural Natural Resources Conservation Service Emergency Watershed Protection Program grant, authorizing a refund of a property tax overpayment, accepting the 2021 audit, approving the 2021 corrective action plan, and declaring property surplus from various departments. I know you said you want the Downs tree service off the consent. Any
Right.
others?
The Downs you want off.
For the tree
recuse?
planting?
Oh, yeah, I'm off that.
Okay.
All right, we're good? All right, with that,
Thanks.
we're going back to public comment not to exceed 5 minutes per person. Remember, please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Rorick Hallaby, 1 Franklin Avenue. I'd like to see the resolution ceding the whole of the property to SHPO. Now, if that happened, it happened under your watch. Now, what rationale?
I didn't understand. You just start again.
Yes, let me start again. The resolution you referred to before, ceding all of Shedler to SHPO. When did that happen? Let me see the resolution, okay? And I think it happened under your watch. I'd like to know why you did that in the first place. And then for you to tell us, oh, but you went to SHPO and you told them they could do it, but they couldn't. And somehow 5 years have gone by and they've gotten everything they wanted. So my point is, what is the resolution? Who passed it and why did you pass it? Okay, this is one. Now, as far as the numbers, and I realize I'm challenged and stupid compared to your genius. For 2 years, I kept on asking for a statement by Bob Rooney to tell us about the reconciliation of the finances at Shedler. It took me 2 years for a village council that prides itself on its transparency. I finally got it. It is if you read numbers, a $7 million project. Okay? And it's been 7 years. It's been 7 years. It's been 7 years. And it's $7 million. Now, when can we get a new reconciliation that shows where things stand right now? I'll bet you anything it's more like $8 million. Okay? Now, will someone tell me, when can I get a new reconciliation as a taxpayer, as a 52-year resident of Ridgewood, of what the numbers are? I remember one of your friends came over here, started really with a shell game about how Ridgewood is so clever because we were making so much money on Shedler, until I pointed out it was taxpayer money. It's coming out of my pocket anyway. Now, let's talk about conceptual plan versus engineering plans. So my wife hired an architect to say we need a 3-bedroom colonial. Before we know it, 5 big tractors have come in, and they're building a 20-bedroom house, one of these McMansions. Don't you think we are entitled to be kept up to date between the conceptual and the engineering? Now, you prided yourself on the fact that through non-interference you're able to get your way, right? Non-interference is keeping us peasants in the dark. Yes, it is. Also, I'm proud to say that you were quoted as having blamed me and another person for the delay at Shedler. Boy, did I feel good that I have so much power that I had any effect on Shedler. What a joke that is. You were quoted at that, saying that.
Who said that? I'm sorry.
Yes. You know who it is that you spoke to?
I'm sorry?
You know who it is you spoke to, blaming me and another person for the delays at Shedler. Now you know nothing about it.
I don't know.
It's the same person that you spoke to, giving yourself credit for keeping Health Barn in town. What a joke that is. It made people laugh.
I don't know who you're talking
Yeah, I know you. I know. You know who I'm talking to.
Mr. Hallaby, just
Now,
continue.
don't interrupt me. You're out of order.
All right, continue.
Okay? Now, being called a liar, basically, with all this misinformation coming from you, I take that as a badge of honor. You define misinformation. You define misinformation. And let me tell you something. You lock horns with Cynthia Hallaby, you'll soon find out who the alpha female is. You think you can browbeat me and bully me with your statements, what you did before, about all this misinformation, about all the fact I don't understand the numbers. I do understand the numbers. I have them right here. Now, I will not ask of you an apology, because you're not the type of person who is sincere to offer an apology. What I do ask is Pam, Paul, and Lorraine to say this has to stop, where the mayor of the village insults someone who is as caring as I am about what is happening in town. Like it or not, I'm going to be here. Now, I might get run over by one of your people in the police force, but you know something? As long as I can walk, I'm going to be here telling you what I think. Truth to power. Truth to power.
Thank you.
I'm not finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Public comment?
Hello. This will be a little easier. David Refkin, 401 Westina Terrace, a resident since March of 2020. I'm on Green Ridgewood, serve as vice chair. Just quickly, background, former director of sustainable development at Time Inc., board president, National Recycling Coalition, and I've been a consultant most recently for the City of Detroit, where we're focused on building a recycling infrastructure for the city. So I've been involved in recycling for many years. Professionally, I think the village does a very solid job on recycling, but there are opportunities to employ best management practices to increase revenues. So as you consider renewing the contract with Atlantic Coast Fibers, I would suggest a few key questions to look at. The first is, what is the revenue forecast or the range for recyclables given the changeable nature of commodities? Is there a floor in the pricing? Is there a ceiling in the pricing? Of course, the commodity markets can bounce all over the place, but how do we protect the essentially the budget, the revenue forecast for the village? How do market changes affect the town's revenue, and what opportunities are there to increase revenue, improve recycling, make some changes, which I'll talk about. Now that many people are working from home, and every day we see more and more corrugated boxes showing up at people's front doors, is there consideration to increasing the frequency of recycling? There's just a lot more recyclables out there. Does the recycler work with us to expand the recycling of new materials? For example, other types of plastics that currently are not recycled. How does the recycler work with us to reduce contamination? And are there incentives put in place so that contamination, improving the quality of the recyclables, giving us more revenue, and frankly giving the recycler more revenue? Is there consideration to collect glass separately? Of course, glass breaks, it's a contaminant, and it can ruin all of those valuable recyclables such as metal cans and plastics. So those would be some of the key questions I would consider. And in conclusion, myself, Green Ridgewood, we're happy to work with Rich and Sean on improving what is already a solid recycling operation, but there are some real opportunities out there.
I don't think I can, all right, pull it back. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I know what it was. Are you suggesting more frequent recycling pickup?
Yes. So best practices in many cities would have recycling as frequent as trash collection. Some cities even have recycling more than trash collection. There are automated systems that we could consider, so we might not need to increase manpower. One-person trucks with automatic recycling pickup. And, look, we don't know. Revenues bounced all over the place in the last 5 years, but we could potentially look at a pilot where we employ best practices, including, for example, carts, where we 64-gallon carts where corrugated is put in. As I was driving here tonight, my neighbor had all these beautiful corrugated boxes outside from all of his Halloween decorations, and it's just raining, and those things are, a lot less valuable when it rains. And if we could segregate mixed paper from corrugated paper, that would probably also increase the value of the materials. So there's a lot of different things that we could look at, but certainly frequency of recycling is a key.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening again. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Just a few comments about your discussion concerning the smart controllers. I think Mr. Calby's suggestion was wonderful as a start, to get the people who are using the smart controllers to operate between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. would be a big, big help. Because right now when you drive down the street, you see some of them at 10 o'clock in the morning, different days of the week, and you just don't know whether somebody's using a smart control or not. They say they are, but are they registered? That's another question I have. I haven't seen a single placard in my neighborhood. I've had people tell me they have a smart controller, but I have not seen a single placard. And I don't live in a neighborhood where the front door of the house or the front windows of the house are 150 feet away from the curb. I live in a neighborhood where they're 30 feet away from the curb, and I can really see the front windows, and I have not seen a single placard. So I'm wondering how many of these people who tell me they have smart controllers are actually registered. I don't think many of them are. If they are, they're not following the regulations with respect to displaying the placard. Great suggestion from 3 to 7, but it concerns me that they would be allowed to water 7 days a week. I'm not clear as to why that is. Right now, you are not allowed to water, regardless of if you have a sprinkler like me that's hose-ended sprinkler or an automatic system, you're not allowed to water on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Why would we permit people who have smart controllers to water 7 days a week? They should also be restricted from watering on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. I don't understand why they would be allowed to water on days when nobody else is allowed to water. The changes that you're proposing, if you're going to allow people who have smart controls or restrict people to, who have smart controls to be watered from 3 to 7, need to be put in an ordinance. Right now, the ordinance covers only people who are using hose-ended sprinklers and automatic systems. It does not cover people who are using the smart controllers. So please, if you are going to specify that they are only going to be allowed to water from 3 to 7, that needs to go in an ordinance somewhere so it's clear. Right now, it's on a piece of paper in the water department, and no public hearing on it. Council has no control over it. So I'd appreciate that being done as well. I am shocked. I am absolutely shocked that you want to take a constitutional challenge on the political signs. It amazes me. And we've got 2 attorneys that are on the council as well. I don't know why you would do that. With all due respect, I kind of think you're living in a vacuum. Have you driven through Wyckoff or Glen Rock lately? There are still people who have Trump 2020 signs up. Why would you possibly want to take a constitutional challenge on that? I don't understand it. We've said, or it's been reported, that that's a constitutional issue. Why would you not want to change the ordinance to eliminate that? The only people who are going to make money on this are the attorneys. Why would you want to spend legal fees if somebody has a sign up and they get a summons and they want to take a challenge on it and challenge you in court? Why would you do that? I don't understand that. Drive through some of these other towns. These signs are everywhere. People have got Obama signs up, Trump signs up. It's not bothering anybody. What is the big deal in Ridgewood that we want to get rid of those signs and pay legal fees if somebody takes us to court? I'm just stumped by it. I'm absolutely stumped by it that you would make that decision. Please rethink that. Rethink it. You're talking about spending a lot of money in court if somebody challenges you on that for no reason at all. Thank you.
And I'd like to address that, Boyd.
Just wait till we
Oh,
finish.
excuse me. I didn't realize. I forgot there was somebody else in the audience.
It's okay. Pay attention, Paul.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I know you think I'm the same person as
don't
this
do
man.
that,
We've
Ann.
had this discussion. I'm a different person. I need to say something about the political signs as well. I don't understand why I could have a sign up in my yard all the time that says, I'm in support of full-day kindergarten, or I'm in support of marijuana in the schools, or anything else, but I can't have a candidate's name. I don't get that. I don't think that's right. It sounds like it's not constitutionally right. If I want to put up a sign, for a former president, let's say, well, why can't I do that? I don't understand why my neighbor can have up a sign about public school teachers or this or that, and I can't have up one with a candidate's name. I don't have any signs up now, but I don't understand why I can't, and I really disagree with the statement that let's just do it, and if somebody wants to challenge it, that's not right. Thank you.
All right.
Anyone else?
With that, we're going to close public comment, and I'm going to let Paul, Councilman Vagianos, I'm sorry, go first.
Thank you. And I think the issue is that, as you say, it sounds like a constitutional issue. It does. But we don't know what the decision would be in this particular instance. And the village has an interest in keeping the landscape clear. And so I don't have a problem, as I said, and if a court finds that this is unconstitutional, then we must abide by it. But until the court rules on this, I mean, now we're going to be subject to saying, well, if anyone takes a constitutional issue or sues the village for any issue in order to save legal fees, we should just do as is requested. So that's my reasoning. I understand yours, and I respectfully disagree. So did you want to respond also? Because I had something else
No, go ahead.
to bring up. I wanted to ask Heather and Matt a question. So is the administration of government amendment going to be on the next village council meeting for a vote?
I wasn't going to put it on.
Okay, because and respectfully, as I was thinking about this afterwards, what I realized is that there were 4 council people here, and of the 4 council people here, the way this is currently written, if the same 4 council people are here in January, the only one who would be eligible to become mayor or deputy mayor or president pro tem would be Susan.
I'm good with that. No.
And so I wonder, Matt, does Susan have a conflict in that regard? Because she is the only sitting council member who would benefit by this provision.
No, I don't think there's a conflict with regard to that, particularly because the reason why it can't go ahead is because there isn't any consensus or majority that you have with any one way to go ahead. So it's not a. I don't believe it would be a conflict. She's a
But
council.
she
She's
gains
a council member.
Mm-hmm.
It has got to do with the voting process about the election of the mayor, and it's permitted.
But she is the only one here. The other 3 are, under this provision, ineligible.
Is that right?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you're misreading
think
it.
you're-
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's-
counting
that's
comes,
right.
if the 5 people can come to an agreement by majority as to who should become mayor, that's what that's
Absolutely.
the result. This only kicks in with the numbers in the last election if they can't come
And it's
to
the
an
last
agreement.
Correct. So, but if the council cannot agree on who should have one of these 3 offices,
Which election does it go back to?
it only goes to the last one, which would be the one
The last
that is
one, which
up,
would have been,
which would be November
2
of
years
22. It would be November of 22,
We've
which
already-
means that,
can I
excuse me,
just-
let me just finish, which means that under this provision, only Susan could gain one of these 3 offices of the 4 sitting council people. I believe that she has a conflict in that regard.
All right, I don't have a conflict. Matt has
Well, no,
already...
it's up to Matt to
He just
decide.
said I don't have a conflict.
Yeah,
Do you want to
wouldn't-
beat the dead
I don't
horse?
think so, because it's one of those areas of
Thank you.
administration that council members are allowed to vote on. It's
Because if you want to change it to gain for yourself, then why wouldn't you have a conflict? Then we are all conflicted out, so we all go back in as a rule.
Well,
So
this would open it up to all 4 council members as opposed to just
you would
one.
still have a conflict, so
No,
everybody...
no, because it applies
All right,
equally.
there's no conflict.
Excuse me.
There's no conflict,
I don't
Paul.
interrupt you.
All right,
It applies equally to all 4 council members at that point. Right now, it only applies to you.
Well, there's no conflict, and we have 2 people who aren't interested in changing it. I'm going to go back to 2 things. I agree with Ann and Boyd Loving. I actually don't understand why we would do a constitutional challenge. And by the way, I agree that I don't understand why the sign that says, I like potatoes is okay, but, this one's not. I kind of agree, and if we're up to it and, that we have 2 people who don't want to change it, I would be happy to remove it, but that's another thing. And finally, on closing, I've said, and I'll say it again, I said a couple of weeks ago, I am going to clear up any misinformation or disinformation as it relates to Shedler, and I'm going to start with the idea that this is a 7-year project, which by my last calculation, 2018 to 22, is 4 years, and 4 years after engineering plans and other documents that are submitted to SHPO. If Mr. Hallaby would like to open the document, I believe that it is an authorization for a Phase 1 archaeological study authorized by the Village Council. I believe it was 2017 to Connolly Hickey. It was an award of contract. I believe my dates are probably close to accurate. My memory serves me well. And as far as the post on social media, it did say it was Ridgewood Walks. And I immediately contacted the administrator of the page to say your information is wrong. She chose to ignore me and leave that misinformation or disinformation, have it your way for everyone to read. It is not 7 years. It is not $7 million. It is not. And if Mr. Rooney doesn't respond to you, that's Mr. Rooney. I can't speak for him. So with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Wait, I would like to let Matt finish his explanation. He got cut off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Counting the votes from the last election.
Oh, yeah, it's administration. It's one of those areas where council members are able to vote. I mean, you're able to vote for yourself for mayor if you feel you can. So that happens, and so it's not a conflict.
With that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.